I joined GreatBay Technologies as a mid-level project coordinator, the kind of role where you're expected to fade into the administrative background. My resume wasn't glossy: state school degree, scrappy consulting gigs, gaps explained by caring for my father through his final year. Diane Harper, my supervisor, made her assessment clear during our first one-on-one. "We value initiative here, Vivian, but don't overthink processes that already work." Her laugh had that crystalline quality: bright, sharp, dismissive. She straightened the framed leadership awards on her credenza while delivering feedback, never quite making eye contact. The division handled technology deployment for mid-sized manufacturers, a chaotic blend of hardware logistics, software integration, and client handholding. Diane managed appearances beautifully. PowerPoint decks with consultant speak. Lunch meetings that produced no action items. Meanwhile, projects bled deadlines. Clients called my desk directly because her voicemail stayed full. I started keeping duplicate records, not out of paranoia, just survival instinct from years of making broken systems function. Small victories accumulated slowly. I created a shared drive nobody asked for, color-coding client timelines. Automated reminder emails for contract renewals Diane kept forgetting. Built relationships with the warehouse crew she treated like furniture. When the Belmont manufacturing rollout threatened to implode, missing equipment, untrained staff, launch date 2 weeks out, I worked through a weekend reconfiguring shipment priorities and drafting training modules. Diane took the Monday morning credit call with executives, mentioning her team's flexibility while I sat silently on mute. "You're very thorough, Vivian," she told me afterward, that word thorough landing like an insult. "Sometimes too thorough. You need to learn when good enough is sufficient." Then came the Ashton merger. GreatBay acquired Ashton Solutions in April, a competitor with complementary client bases and overlapping territories. Corporate mandated integration within 90 days. Our division would absorb Ashton's dozen accounts, inherit their staff, consolidate operations. Massive undertaking. Career-defining visibility. Diane circled it like a hawk eyeing prey, volunteering to lead the transition before anyone asked. She assembled what she called her core integration team at an offsite kickoff. 11 people around a conference table, catered sandwiches nobody touched. Diane at the head, laser pointer clicking through slides about synergy frameworks and cultural harmonization. My name appeared once, buried in a sub-bullet: administrative support, documentation and compliance. I nodded, took notes, said nothing. For 6 weeks, I did the invisible work. While Diane held daily stand-ups that accomplished nothing, I mapped every Ashton contract against our delivery capabilities, identifying conflicts, redundancies, and gaps. I cross-referenced their project management software with ours, building translation guides for teams that spoke different operational languages. Late nights, I interviewed Ashton staff Diane never bothered meeting, learning their workflows, their concerns, their institutional knowledge that would vanish without capture. The documentation grew into something comprehensive. Process playbooks for each account. Risk matrices. Contingency protocols. Staff transition timelines with specific role assignments. I stored everything in that shared drive, organized into folders anyone could navigate. Sent weekly summaries nobody acknowledged. Diane preferred status theater, visible motion without substance. She scheduled overlapping meetings, double-booked resources, promised deliverables to executives without checking capacity. When the Ashton operations manager, a sharp woman named Christine, questioned timeline feasibility during a planning call, Diane's voice went cold. "I think we know our own capabilities, Christine. Let's stay focused on solutions, not obstacles." Christine caught my eye through the video screen, a flicker of recognition passing between us. After the call, she messaged me directly, "You're the one who actually knows what's happening, aren't you?" I sent her the master spreadsheet. She replied with a prayer hands emoji. July arrived with oppressive heat and mounting pressure. Integration deadline loomed. Corporate scheduled a mid-August review, executives flying in, presentations expected, success metrics demanded. Diane's energy shifted from competent to manic. She started working later, talking faster, interrupting more. Her emails arrived at midnight, full of capitalized urgency and conflicting instructions. That's when the micromanagement accusations started. "Vivian, you're CCING too many people on updates. It creates noise. Vivian, stop scheduling check-ins with Ashton staff without clearing them through me first. Vivian, you need to let others own their pieces. You're making people feel undermined. I was doing the work she wasn't doing, ensuring nothing fell through cracks she refused to acknowledge existed. But I adjusted. Reduced email frequency. Requested approval for conversations. Shrank my visible footprint. The final week of July, Diane called me into her office. The door clicked shut with ominous finality. She sat back in her chair, fingers steepled, expression somewhere between pity and triumph. Vivian, I need to talk about your involvement in the handover process. My stomach dropped. You've been incredibly dedicated. Nobody questions your effort. But I'm getting feedback, from multiple sources, that your approach is creating friction. The micromanagement, the need to control information flow, the difficulty letting others lead. She paused, let that sit. It's affecting team dynamics. Who gave this feedback? I asked quietly. That's not productive to discuss. What matters is addressing the pattern. She leaned forward, voice softening into false sympathy. I think what's best, for you, for the team, is if you step back from the day-to-day integration work. Focus on your core responsibilities. Let the specialists handle their specialties. The room felt airless. Step back how? I'm removing you from the handover meetings and the core team structure. You'll transition to supporting Philip and Angela on routine account maintenance. Lower pressure, more sustainable pace. I think you'll find it healthier. Philip and Angela, recent hires, capable but still learning systems I'd built. Busy work, essentially. Exile disguised as concern. This is effective immediately? Starting Monday. I'll announce the restructure this afternoon. She smiled, that practiced executive smile. I know change is hard, Vivian, but sometimes we need to get out of our own way. I stood slowly, legs unsteady. Is there anything else? Just that I appreciate everything you've contributed. This isn't about your value, it's about fit. I walked back to my desk, vision tunneling. Around me, the office continued its normal rhythm, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, someone laughing at a YouTube video. My shared drive sat open on my screen, hundreds of hours of work nobody would miss until it mattered. Here's what I did, nothing dramatic. No confrontations, no emotional emails, no venting to colleagues. I simply stopped. Closed the folders. Logged out of the project channels. When Philip asked about the Ashton account spreadsheets that afternoon, I forwarded him access links without explanation. Angela wanted the integration timeline methodology. I sent the templates with a friendly "let me know if you have questions." Diane announced the restructure in a 4 p.m. all hands. We're streamlining leadership on the Ashton integration to empower decision-making and reduce coordination overhead. Translation: I was the overhead being reduced. She thanked me publicly for my foundational work before pivoting to introducing the streamlined core team. People avoided my eyes. That weekend, I didn't touch my laptop. Monday morning, I arrived at my usual time, made coffee, responded to the account maintenance emails now filling my inbox. Boring, predictable work. I helped Philip troubleshoot a client portal issue. Walked Angela through our invoicing system. Left at 5:30 p.m. Tuesday, the questions started. Christine from Ashton messaged me, who do I talk to about the equipment staging plan? Nobody seems to know what was decided. I referred her to Diane. An hour later, a warehouse supervisor called my extension. Vivian, we've got Ashton inventory arriving Thursday but no receiving instructions in the system. What doc? I transferred him to the core team's shared line. Wednesday brought visible tension. Diane's calendar exploded with back-to-back meetings, rescheduled sessions, emergency syncs, one-on-ones with confused staff. I watched her through the glass walls, tie loosened, laptop screen reflecting panic across her face. She kept glancing toward my desk, a look I couldn't quite read. Thursday morning, the unraveling accelerated. An Ashton client called our main line, furious. Their go-live was scheduled for Friday, but their staff hadn't received training credentials. The call escalated to our VP of Client Services, who forwarded it to Diane with a terse, "Please advise ASAP." At 10 a.m., the warehouse manager appeared at Diane's office, voice raised enough to carry. We've got 3 pallets of equipment that apparently aren't supposed to be here? And missing shipments that are supposed to be here? Can someone tell me what the hell is happening? Diane emerged looking haggard, scanning the floor. Her eyes landed on me. I kept my gaze on my screen, typing an innocuous email to a client about a password reset. Noon. The CFO's assistant requested an emergency status update on integration financials, budget reconciliation, cost tracking, vendor payment schedules. Diane spent 40 minutes searching for documents that didn't exist because nobody had maintained them after I left. By 2 p.m., I counted 7 people who'd approached my desk asking variations of "Do you know where Vivian kept the?" Each time, I smiled politely and said, "I'm not on that project anymore, but I'm sure the core team can help." 3:30 p.m. The conference room adjacent to Diane's office suddenly filled, our division VP, the head of operations, 2 people from corporate I didn't recognize. Through the glass, I watched Diane present something on her laptop, hands gesturing with increasing desperation. The operations head kept shaking his head, pointing at the screen, asking questions that made Diane's face redden. Then she exploded. The conference room door flew open. Diane stormed across the floor, heels striking tile like gunshots. Every conversation stopped. She headed straight toward me, and for a second I thought she might actually shout. Instead, she hissed, "My office. Now." I stood, walked calmly across 20 feet that felt like 20 miles. Behind me, whispers erupted. Inside her office, the door slammed. She whirled on me, composure shattered. "Why does no one know what's going on?" Her voice cracked, ongoing, fury and desperation mixing. "The operations team is asking for documentation that apparently doesn't exist. Christine says processes were never finalized. Clients are calling about training nobody scheduled." "What the hell happened, Vivian?" I kept my voice level, almost gentle. "I'm not sure I understand. You said specialists should handle their specialties. I assumed the core team had everything under control. Don't play games with me. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Where are the master schedules? The account transition plans? The vendor coordination matrices? In the shared drive. Same place they've been for 6 weeks. Nobody can find anything. It's just random folders and spreadsheets with no explanation." I tilted my head slightly. "They're organized chronologically by account, with process documentation in the methodology folder. There's an index document that explains the structure. I sent it to the team in June." Her jaw clenched. "Well, nobody remembers that. And nobody knows how to read your system. It's not my system anymore. You asked me to step back. I asked you to step back from meetings, not sabotage the entire project." The word hung between us like smoke. Sabotage. I felt something inside me go very quiet and very cold. I sabotaged nothing. I documented every process, created every template, built every timeline. Then you removed me and assigned the work to others. What they did, or didn't do, with those resources isn't my responsibility. You knew they weren't ready. You knew this would fall apart. I knew the work was complex. I didn't know whether the core team could handle it because you made that decision, not me." Diane's eyes went bright with unshed tears of frustration. "Corporate is in that conference room right now demanding answers I don't have. The CFO wants a full accounting of integration costs that apparently nobody tracked. Ashton's operations manager filed a complaint about lack of communication. We're 4 days from deadline and everything is chaos." I said nothing. She exhaled shakily, seemed to remember she was still my superior. "I need you to fix this. Get back on the project. Pull together whatever documentation exists, brief the team, get us back on track." "Is that an official role change?" "It's an emergency." "With what authority? What resources? What support?" "Vivian. Because if I'm going to unfuck a situation I was explicitly removed from, I need clear mandate and explicit backing. Otherwise, I'm just that micromanager creating friction, and I'd rather not repeat that experience." Her expression cycled through anger, calculation, defeat. "What do you want?" "Nothing. I want you to go back to that conference room and explain to corporate why the integration is off track. Take accountability for the leadership decisions you made. I'll keep doing my job, the one you assigned me. You're seriously going to let this fail out of spite?" I stood. "I'm going to let the core team you trusted handle their specialties. If they need help, they know where to find me. Are we done?" She stared at me like I'd become someone unrecognizable. Maybe I had. I walked out, returning to my desk while every eye in the division tracked my movement. The afternoon descended into controlled chaos. Diane held a frantic team meeting, voice tight with barely contained panic. I stayed at my desk, visible but removed. Philip approached nervously around 4 p.m. Vivian, I'm drowning. The Ashton accounts have dependencies I don't understand, and there's no clear documentation about. There's comprehensive documentation in the shared drive. Integration folder, subfolder marked Ashton accounts, organized by client name. Each has a transition playbook. I looked there. It's just, there's so much, and I don't know what's current versus outdated. Everything is current as of the day I was removed from the project. The date stamps show last modification. Could you just walk me through? Philip, I'd love to help, but I was told I create friction when I'm too involved in others' work. I'm sure you'll figure it out. His face fell, but he nodded and walked away. That evening, I went home and slept better than I had in months. Friday morning arrived with the energy of an impending disaster. The integration deadline was Monday. Corporate's review meeting was Tuesday. And according to office whispers, our division VP had been on calls with the CEO until midnight. At 8:30 a.m., I was summoned, not by Diane, but by her boss. Martin Crawford, division VP, was a measured man in his late 50s who'd built his career on operational excellence. His office occupied the corner with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He gestured to a chair, his expression unreadable. Vivian, thank you for coming. I'll be direct, I'm trying to understand what happened with the Ashton integration, and I'm getting conflicting information. I sat, spine straight. What would you like to know? Start with your role. Diane says you were handling administrative support. Others say you were essentially running the entire transition. Which is accurate? Both, depending on perspective. My title was administrative support. My actual work involved comprehensive project coordination, documentation, and cross-functional alignment. Why the discrepancy? I chose words carefully. Diane prefers visible leadership, strategy sessions, executive updates, team motivation. She's excellent at those things. The operational mechanics, granular planning, risk mitigation, daily problem solving, those fell to me by default. And then she removed you from the project. Yes, sir. Why? She felt I was micromanaging. Creating friction. Undermining others' autonomy. Martin's eyes narrowed. Were you? I was maintaining detailed oversight of interdependent work streams to prevent failures. Whether that constitutes micromanagement depends on your operational philosophy. He almost smiled. That's a diplomatic answer. He turned his monitor toward me, showing a spreadsheet, my spreadsheet, the master integration tracker. I found this last night while trying to piece together project status. Did you create this? Yes, sir. It's the most comprehensive project document I've seen in 20 years. Client timelines, resource allocations, dependency mapping, risk registers, vendor coordination schedules, everything we needed to manage this transition is here. He paused. Nobody on Diane's core team knew it existed. I sent weekly updates with links. They're in the project email archive. They never looked. That's not a question I can answer. Martin leaned back, studying me. Help me understand something. You knew removing you would cause problems. Why didn't you fight it? This was the moment that mattered. I met his gaze directly. Because challenging Diane publicly would have made me exactly what she accused me of being, someone who can't let go of control. And because I needed someone with authority to see the truth themselves rather than take my word for it. That's a hell of a risk. The integration was going to fail either way, with me absorbing blame for being difficult, or without me revealing the underlying issues. At least this way, the problems are visible. He nodded slowly. Do you want your job? The question surprised me. I don't understand. Your job. Here, in this division, reporting to Diane. Do you want it? I considered. I want to do work that matters. Where competence is valued more than appearances. If that exists here, yes. I'm restructuring the division. Diane will be moving into a strategic advisory role, leading business development and client relations, which plays to her strengths. I need someone to run operations. Someone who can handle complexity without ego. Someone who gives a damn about getting details right. My heart hammered. You're offering me her job? I'm offering you the job that should have existed, Director of Division Operations. Diane keeps her title and salary, different responsibilities. You get authority matching the work you were already doing. Interested? I thought about every dismissal, every condescending laugh, every time I'd made myself smaller to avoid conflict. Yes, sir. Very interested. Good. We have 4 days to salvage this integration. I'm announcing the restructure this afternoon. Until then, I need you to brief me on every critical issue and what it'll take to resolve them. We spent 3 hours in that office. I walked him through the master plan, what was on track, what had derailed, what could be recovered. He asked sharp questions, taking notes, occasionally swearing under his breath. When I explained the Ashton training credentials issue, he immediately called our IT director. When I mentioned the vendor payment schedules nobody had maintained, he looped in finance. By noon, we had a recovery plan. By 1 p.m., Martin had pulled the core team into an emergency session, with me presenting status. Faces around the table cycled through confusion, resentment, and grudging respect as I outlined next steps with granular clarity. Diane sat at the far end, silent and pale. At 3 p.m., Martin announced the restructure in a terse division-wide email. Diane left early. Nobody asked where she went. The weekend became a war room. I worked with Christine and the Ashton team, finally able to coordinate directly. We salvaged the Monday deadline, not pretty, not perfect, but functional. Training sessions were rescheduled. Equipment was redirected. Documentation was completed. Tuesday's executive review happened as scheduled. Martin presented, but I fielded technical questions, walking the CFO through budget reconciliation and timeline recovery. The CEO asked about risk management. I showed him the mitigation plans I'd maintained for months. At the end, he looked at Martin and said simply, "This is what operational excellence looks like. Make sure she has what she needs." Diane attended the meeting but said nothing. The aftermath unfolded over weeks. Diane remained in her new role, focusing on client-facing work she genuinely excelled at. We interacted professionally, but something fundamental had broken. She knew I'd let her fail. I knew she'd never trusted my competence until it was gone. One afternoon, a month later, she stopped by my office, my actual office now, with a door and a window. "Vivian, can we talk?" I gestured to a chair. She sat, looking older somehow. "I owe you an apology. I was threatened by you. Your thoroughness, your competence, it made me feel inadequate, so I convinced myself you were the problem." She laughed bitterly. Classic insecurity playbook. "I appreciate you saying that. Do you forgive me?" I thought about it honestly. "I don't know yet. But I respect you for asking." She nodded, stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you're going to be better at this job than I ever was. You actually care about the work, not just the appearance of doing it." After she left, I sat quietly, watching the city through my window. The Ashton integration completed successfully in September. Corporate used our process documentation as a template for future acquisitions. Christine and I became close collaborators, eventually friends. My team grew from 3 to 12, every person chosen for skill and integrity over polish. But success brought its own complications. Not everyone celebrated the restructure. Diane still had allies, people who'd benefited from her style of leadership, who saw my promotion as political maneuvering rather than earned recognition. The whispers started in break rooms, at happy hours I wasn't invited to. She sabotaged Diane to steal her job. Sat back and watched everything burn just to make herself look good. Cold, calculating. Can't trust someone like that. I heard the rumors thirdly, through Angela, who'd remained loyal despite everything. She appeared at my office door one afternoon, closing it gently behind her. "You need to know what people are saying." I listened to her recount the narrative being woven, a story where I was the villain, the ambitious underling who'd engineered my boss's downfall through strategic incompetence and withheld information. In this version, Diane was the victim, pushed out by corporate politics and subordinate betrayal. "Does it bother you?" Angela asked. "That they're rewriting what actually happened?" I thought about it carefully. The people who matter know the truth. Martin knows. The operations team knows. Christine and the Ashton staff know. Everyone who actually did the work knows. But what about everyone else? Everyone else wasn't there. They're choosing a story that fits their worldview, that success comes from manipulation rather than competence. I can't control that narrative without becoming what they're accusing me of. Angela nodded slowly. So you just let them think it? I let them reveal themselves. The people who believe I sabotaged Diane are people who would sabotage someone in my position. They're projecting their own ethics onto me. She left looking unsatisfied, but I meant what I'd said. Defending yourself against false narratives often just amplifies them. Better to let your continued work speak. Still, the tension created friction. 2 people from my new team requested transfers within a month, both citing cultural fit concerns that were obviously code for not wanting to work under someone they viewed as Machiavellian. I approved the transfers without argument, then promoted 2 analysts from other divisions who'd seen my work firsthand. The real test came when Diane started undermining decisions indirectly. She'd charm clients into requesting changes to established processes, then position herself as the reasonable voice advocating for flexibility while I was the rigid operations director crushing innovation. Subtle, deniable, effective. One particularly frustrating example involved our largest client, Westfield Manufacturing. Diane took them to lunch and returned with promises I'd allegedly made about customizing our deployment schedule to accommodate their factory renovation timeline, promises that would require pulling resources from 3 other projects and violating contractual commitments we'd made elsewhere. When the client called expecting confirmation, I had to explain that no such agreement existed. They were furious, feeling jerked around. Diane expressed shock that there'd been a miscommunication, apologizing profusely while subtly implying I'd failed to coordinate with her. I scheduled a meeting with Martin that afternoon. This is the 3rd time this month Diane's made commitments on behalf of operations without checking feasibility, I said, laying out documentation of each incident. I need clarity on decision-making authority, or we're going to lose clients through broken promises. Martin's jaw tightened as he reviewed the examples. I'll handle it. The following week, a memo clarified that all operational commitments required written approval from the Director of Operations, me. Client-facing staff could discuss options but not finalize terms. Diane's face when that memo circulated was carved ice. She requested a meeting the next day. This time, the polite veneer was gone. You went to Martin behind my back. I raised a business issue with my supervisor, same as you would. You're trying to strip me of client relationships. It's the only thing I have left. Her voice cracked on that last word, and I saw the truth beneath her anger. Diane was drowning. The strategic advisory role Martin created for her was essentially exile with a nice title. She knew it, I knew it, everyone knew it. And my success made her failure more visible by contrast. I softened my voice. I'm not trying to strip anything from you. But I can't let client relationships compromise operational integrity. You're excellent at building rapport, use that to understand what clients actually need, then work with me to deliver it properly. You mean subordinate myself to you? I mean collaborate. Like we should have been doing all along. She stood abruptly. I underestimated you, Vivian. I thought you were just a competent worker bee. Turns out you're every bit as political as anyone else climbing this ladder. If protecting the work we're responsible for is political, then yes, I'm political. She left without another word. 6 months later, I received a leadership award at the annual company meeting, the same award that had sat on Diane's credenza. Martin presented it, mentioning my exceptional operational leadership and commitment to excellence. Diane wasn't there. She'd taken a position at a competitor 2 weeks earlier, lateral move, smaller company, probably fewer talented subordinates to feel threatened by. I thought about thanking her for removing me from that project, because her mistake had freed me from invisibility. But that felt petty. Instead, I focused on building something better. A team culture where thoroughness wasn't confused with micromanagement. Where documentation was valued, not dismissed. Where people were recognized for the work they actually did, not the work they claimed credit for. Late one evening, I found Philip still at his desk, stressed about a complex rollout. Instead of solving it for him, I sat down and walked him through the problem-solving methodology. Showed him how to break complexity into manageable pieces. Trusted him to find the answer. He did. That's the difference, I realized. Diane managed appearances. I built capability. My phone buzzed, a text from my partner, coming home soon? Made dinner. I smiled, packed my laptop, turned off my office light. The building settled into evening quiet, janitorial staff beginning their rounds. I passed the conference room where everything had changed, remembering Diane's panic, Martin's questions, that moment I chose truth over safety. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing. Let the gap you leave behind reveal the value you provided. Let the absence speak louder than any defense you could mount. I walked to my car, November air sharp and clean. Somewhere above, stars hid behind city light pollution, always there even when invisible. I'd been invisible too, once. Not anymore. The drive home took 20 minutes through sparse traffic. My partner met me at the door, and we ate dinner talking about ordinary things, weekend plans, a funny podcast, should we finally replace the living room couch. Normal life, hard-won and precious. Later, lying in bed, I thought about all the people still grinding through invisible work, absorbing credit theft and dismissal, wondering if competence would ever be enough. It will be, I wanted to tell them. Not everywhere, not always, not without cost. But somewhere, someone with actual authority will finally look past appearances and see the truth. Your documentation will speak when you're silenced. Your absence will reveal what your presence sustained. And when that moment comes, you'll have a choice, bitterness or building. I chose building. My eyes closed, sleep arriving easy. Tomorrow would bring new projects, new challenges, new opportunities to prove that doing the work right matters more than looking like you did. The spreadsheet I created that first month still lived on the server, a template now used across the company. Hundreds of projects, thousands of hours of coordination, all flowing from that initial decision to document everything even when nobody was watching. That's the secret they don't tell you about Vindication. It's not about the moment someone admits you were right. It's about building something so solid that even when they try to erase you, the foundation remains. And when the structure collapses in your absence, everyone finally understands what you were holding up all along.